If you clicked on this video expecting a Jin Mugen scale or Yamazaki scale, I'm sorry, but this isn't the video for you. The reason isn't really that deep. We just have absolutely no feats and practically little to no information surrounding both of these characters, except for the fact that one of them is the father of Vinjin and the other might be the father of Gun. So in the span of the past two chapters, PTJ has managed to introduce two characters who are speculated to be on par with Gaprion. Now of course, with that comes the extreme hype surrounding these characters, the people who will change their Discord profile pictures to the silhouettes of these guys and swear they're actually them in real life, and the characters in the series who are related to these guys and will immediately get a huge upscale in power because of their sperm. It's not the characters that are the problem. In fact, if anything, this hypes up the pre-generation arc even more, but it's the way these characters are introduced that kind of plays with the plot and causes a few problems for me. You notice a trend with these silhouette based characters, and it's the fact that none of them ever utter a word in the series or even show any small feat of combat abilities, yet they always end up being on the highest tier in people's tier list based on a couple words that a certain character said, and these words should always be taken with a grain of salt as well. As I mentioned earlier, the problem is not with the characters themselves, but more with the way they're introduced. If you told me 3 weeks ago that in 3 weeks Lookism's top 3 would be in complete shambles, I would not believe you. And that right there was about the biggest lie that I've ever told on this channel. Let's put Mr. Yamazaki aside for a second and compare the introductions of Vinjin's dad and Jake's brother. This wasn't really the first time Jake's brother was introduced, but it was the first time any hints were given surrounding his strength. Taejin basically said he has temporarily left his seat, but he is Seoul's former king. His strength equated to the peak of the first generation. Everyone calls James Lee a legend, but there is no way that the king of Seoul would be under James Lee. There was no prior mention of James Lee really having an equal in the first generation. He was viewed as this character that terrorized the whole entire generation, with absolutely nobody holding a candle to him. Pretty much the Undertaker if you ask me. But then one of the first generation kings he ended up dominating actually mentions that there was someone who could give this guy a run for his money, and it was Jake's brother, in other words Brock Lesnar, a character that's never actually been shown. For Vinjin's dad, a man who wandered without belonging to anywhere in his life, a man who lived his entire life in the wild, told to have been Gaprion Kim's equal, the founder of Jin Mugen's Assyrian. No prior mention of there being a character that was equal to Gaprion Kim, except Jin Young's statements when he was in a shocked state watching UI Daniels steamroll the first affiliate, but even that is irrelevant here. Now that this trend is clear, I'd like to take a look at the main problem that character introductions like these create. First of all, calling someone another person's equal without actually showing any of their feats is very paradoxical, and that is because it is both vague and direct at the same time. It is vague in the sense that, for example, if Jin Mugen is Gaprion Kim's equal, then who would win in a fight? So he wasn't weaker, but he also wasn't necessarily stronger. It's also direct in the sense that it leaves no room for discussion, and what I mean is by that, any arguments surrounding the fact that James Lee could beat Jake's brother, for example, are immediately suppressed or debunked by one simple statement provided with no context given. If anyone ever says, well, James Lee is stronger than Jake's brother because, you know, some yapping, there will always be that one person that replies with, yeah, but Gang Soap said there is no way he would be below him, and you cannot really blame that person. It just messes with every debate surrounding any of these characters, because any debate or attempt at power scaling will always lead back to one simple statement: he doesn't have to have any feats. He's told to have been Gaprion Kim's equal. And for anyone saying you don't have to believe Seokji's statement, it was not necessarily Seokji that said this with the way that it was worded. Saying the words he was told to basically implies that it was agreed upon by a clear majority. Another issue that this sparks that isn't necessarily related to the power scaling scene is the fact that these characters are only mentioned in flashbacks, which means we will never get to see them in action unless it's in a flashback arc or a flashback of a flashback arc, such as in the Cheonliang arc. And you may very well be thinking, why does it matter if it's a flashback or not? At the end of the day, the events are happening and that's all that matters. And the issue with that is the fact that events like these, where it only happens in a flashback, you will always know the conclusion of. For example, when the pre-generation arc comes and the great power that fought Gapriong's fist is revealed, the second that the head of the great power is revealed, we will immediately know that he is weaker, because we know that logically Gapriong would have had to beat him since it already happened and it's a flashback. The sad thing about these characters, maybe not Jake's brother since we have a chance of seeing him in the future and he's still alive as far as we know, but someone like the head of the Yamazaki clan or the father of Vinjin, we will never see in action unless it's in a flashback, which will probably be ages from now or even never. And if the latter of these options is the case, then these characters will have to chill on top of everyone's tier list without actually fighting or doing anything, just because they were stated to be the same strength as Gaprion Kim. You see the issue that comes with this now? The fact that the only effect that these characters will have on the storyline of our series is a ripple effect because of their strong genes is annoying, because now we know that Vinjin is effectively going to be Gaprion level by the end of the series somehow, and Gun is also expected to be Gaprion level, and so is Jake and his brother, so it doesn't really make any sense if everyone's going to be Gaprion level by the end of the series, because then no conclusion can actually be reached. Anyway, bit of a short video today, I just wanted to talk about this, but before I go I'd just like to point one thing out, and it's mainly a rhetorical question, but how in the world did the pre-generation members go from this to this in the span of 3 years?